Thank you for coming to our event. I'm Elizabeth Beach, and I'm from the Human Resources Partnership for Strategy and Innovation. And on behalf of the organizing committee, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to another session of What Matters to Me and Why. What Matters to Me and Why is a chance for us to take some time away from our everyday work and reconnect with our community. As staff, faculty, and students, we spend much of our time dealing with exams, homework, lectures, budgets, personnel, and other topics, and doing things that are required to keep our university and careers running. With this program now going into its 14th year, we have the opportunity to hear from someone who shapes UCI through their daily activities. With this, speakers are asked to simply answer the question, what matters to you and why, authentically. The series provides a forum for speakers to explore their choices made, difficulties encountered, commitments formed, joys experienced, and how these encounters were shaped by their personal values, beliefs, and motivations. The hope is to strengthen bonds between faculty, students, and staff, and celebrate both the diversity of our community and the commonalities that bind us. So this event will also be filmed. So if you do not want to be on film, please relocate to behind our camera. And to begin our program, it's a tradition of us, our guests, to give us a chance to introduce ourselves to each other. So we hope you share in the next 2 minutes your name, department, whether you're a student, staff, or faculty, and anything else you'd like to share. In 2 minutes, we will bring you all back and introduce our wonderful speaker. So please enjoy.
Thanks for taking the time to introduce yourselves. My name's Stacy Kopp. I'm an associate professor in the School of Engineering here. And it's my great privilege to introduce our speaker today, Professor Andrea Nicholas. Professor Nicholas is a professor of teaching in the Department of Neurobiology and Behavior in the Charlie Dunlop School of Biological Sciences. She's been a dynamic faculty member at UCI since 2012 and is also the founder of the Human Biology major, which is one of UCI's most successful and rapidly growing interdisciplinary specialty programs in the Charles Dunlop School of Biological Sciences. She advises thriving undergraduate research efforts and student-run free clinic clubs, and she also leads K-12 outreach in partnership with the Human Biology Club and campus science initiatives. Known for her engaging teaching and real-world approach, Andrea's non-majors biology courses, including drugs in the brain and mood disorders, consistently draw enthusiastic participation and praise from students across campus. Her research focuses on innovative STEM pedagogy, the scholarship of teaching and learning, and building challenging and engaging active learning classrooms in biology and neuroscience. Andrea has received multiple teaching awards, including the Gallow Professor of the Year and the Golden Apple Award for Excellence in Teaching. As a mentor for student programs and pre-health advising, she has shaped key departmental priorities and serves the university through committee service, including as an active member of the Council on Academic Personnel. So let's give Professor Nicholas a warm welcome.
Check, check. 1, 2, 1, 2, check. Okay, so wow. Thank you so much, you guys, for coming and supporting me. I see a lot of familiar faces out there, and I'm sporting my Human Bio swag today. So that was a great introduction. I don't know if I'm worthy of it, but I'm really, really honored to be here to talk about what matters to me and why. And as you guys heard, you know, my biggest claim to fame, I guess, is the Human Biology major and assisting students on their way to successful futures in pre-health. So this process, though, of what matters to me and why was hard because they give you like a year to think about this, and it's very cathartic. And for a long time, all I could hear was Bohemian Rhapsody in my mind. Nothing really matters. Anyone can see. But no, I mean, there's the obvious things that matter to me in my life. This is my daughter, Isabella. You know, when she was born, it was the first point in my life where I really realized what matters to me. doesn't really matter. I've tried to build my life on what matters to other people and how I can help other people facilitate their success. And she is very successful. She's now a captain in the US Air Force, and she manages big research projects for the Air Force. And also we have our puppies here and grand puppies. And that's something I definitely care about. It matters to me. These are the men in my life. This is my husband, Mike, who's always up for adventure. Some of you guys have met him and know him. He's super fun. He just keeps life really light. And it's a good kind of stress reliever at the end of the day to come home to someone who's just always really just that happy, kind of supportive, fun-loving person. And here he is with my dad. They have an ongoing bromance. They really, actually on that day, they actually drove off and left me somewhere because they were having so much fun. They didn't even realize I wasn't there. But my dad is my best friend from day one. He's an honest, hardworking guy. He was a electrician. He worked for a big electrical company in Chicago. He was a union negotiator, and he worked on big, contracts, did a lot of the wiring in the big buildings and along the highways, expressways going to Chicago. And he's going to be 100 years old this year. And he was a World War II veteran, and he eats healthy, he takes care of himself, he lifts weights, he's in good shape, and he's sharp. He remembers everything. And I can go to him and ask him, like, Dad, what was life like before, refrigeration or antibiotics? He has this kind of, wealth of knowledge of what life was like. I grew up in this modest house in Elmhurst, Illinois, which is a Chicago suburb. And this is my brother standing outside the house here. This is my bedroom here, and this is my sister's bedroom here. And my brothers were all subterranean in the basement. And somehow we shoved 8 of us into this house, and we all grew up together. And it's very interesting, the people that grow up down the hall from you. This is my family. This is the family I was born into. Can you guys guess which one I am? I'm this one. Did you say the blonde one? So that's me. And these are my brothers and sisters. I know they look like 30 in this picture, but they're actually all in high school. This was the year 1977. And boy, I was just formed in this swirling mist of teenage hormones, and they were fascinating. And as a little kid, I'd just go room to room to room in my house, and everyone was doing something interesting and exciting, and they threw great parties, big house parties, and so as a little kid, I was exposed to all of that. And I distinctly remember one house party where the opposing high school showed up, and the guys were brawling out on the driveway, and they're fighting. It's like midnight, and my dad's calling the cops on his own children. And my mom, who is a beautiful, gorgeous, feisty, fiery Italian, comes running out of the house with a broom, trying to stop those guys. So that was my life. But they all grew up to be very successful. This is my brother Frank. He is they all got law degrees, but he's an engineer, and he started a patent firm, and now it's in the United States and Southeast Asia. He has companies and is a very large, successful patent firm. This is my brother Joe. He went into hedge funds, and he became a world expert on hedge funds. And he actually is credited with inventing the hedge fund indices, and he does asset management in funds of hedge funds. This is my sister Gina. She was a math major, and Gina went on into management consulting, and then she retired at about 40 and went into land management, and she does a lot of conservation efforts and trying to protect wild lands. This is my brother George. He's a door lawyer. Anyone who walks through the door, he represented, and he's also a little bit of an entrepreneur. He started some apps. And this is my brother John. We call him John Harvard because he went to Harvard. And he is in also wealth management. And they all I saw them all go ahead of me. You know, I got to watch all that. And I had an idyllic childhood. I can't complain about anything. And the parties they threw continued into my 20s. They were Chicago's most eligible bachelors. And I just had an amazing time with my family growing up. I'm in a new family now. This is the Department of Neurobiology and Behavior, and it feels a little bit like home. There's no brawls or anything like that, but I still have intelligent, very just super impressive sisters down the hall from me doing groundbreaking research, and I have successful brothers who are running centers and bringing in funding and doing amazing things for the world. So it feels a lot, you know, like home. And as long as I'm next door playing with you guys and having fun, everybody is kind of pleased with me. So that works out well. And I have some other families too. I like to play in bands. These are some of the bands that I've played with over the years. I love music. I like the process. I like practicing with the bands even more than I like performing. And they are bands of brothers also, and they feel like a little family. And so I thought to myself, well, I'm going to talk about my life in behavioral neuroscience and my studies growing up, you know, in the field of neurobiology and behavior, and the ideal primate culture, because I was in Robert Sapolsky's lab at Stanford, and that was his thing. I learned a lot about hierarchy and stress and learning and memory and stuff like that. And I pitched this to my daughter, and she said, "No, Mom, no. Do not go in front of the university and compare your students to a troop of monkeys. Please, no. It's not cool. Nobody wants to hear it." So I was like, oh, okay, well, still, what am I going to talk about? So we were sitting around Thanksgiving time, and we were talking, and this is when she was like, "No, I can't talk about monkeys." And I said, "Well, what am I going to talk about?" She said, "Mom, just ask ChatGPT. It'll give you a great speech, just stick to it." And so I typed into my phone, "I am a tenured teaching professor at the major university, and I have to give a talk on what matters to me and why what should matter to me." And it came up with this great talk, which I'm not going to give either, but about intrinsic motivation in an extrinsic world. And AI is very egotistical. It always wants to talk about itself. So honestly, my intrinsic and extrinsic motivators are holding hands on a beach somewhere. They're very happy. They get along. I don't think this is for me. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about my life in art. A lot of people don't know this, but before I ever got a degree in biology, I got a bachelor's of fine art. And this is me in high school, in my dorm room, failing. I was a terrible student. I was used to a certain amount of excitation in my life, and there wasn't a lot of it in college in my courses. I'm sure some of you can maybe understand what that's like. And so I didn't go to class a lot, and that's really good. That really informed how I think about students today. I ended up on academic probation, and I struggled, but I had a lot of really wonderful and unique experiences in art school with a lot of really unique and wonderful people, and a lot of firsthand experiences with neuropsychopharmacology and how it affected those around me. And it helped to inform, you know, having that kind of firsthand knowledge makes you a better teacher when you're teaching those subjects, I think. And also I developed a really strong interest in human behavior. Even as an artist, it's one of my paintings from back in the day. I wanted to know what made people do what they did. What were their motivators? You know, what was the function? How did they think? Why did they do what they did? And so this is really where the spark of what would take me into behavioral neuroscience first started. And learning and memory, and how people learn. And I think back when I'm teaching, I never started my timer, so. I think back when I'm teaching to those first art classes. And what happens in an introductory kind of 101 drawing class is that there's a still life in the center of the room. You know, they go into, at least in the old days, that's how it was. And you have a circle of easels around the still life, and you're all looking at these, trying to draw the same thing, right, from different angles, students with easels. And they're drawing and they're drawing for like 30, 40 minutes, and then they say, okay, let's get up and go around the room and see what everyone drew. And it's an absolute horror show of cognition. Introductory drawing classes, some people have enormous vases and they have little squished flowers coming out the top, or they have a little squished vase with flowers going up to the very top of their pad, or they have a little squished, you know, drawing over on the side. And everyone's is different, and everybody's, oh, so embarrassed. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I drew that. But as time goes on, they get better and better. They struggle, they try, they have more experience. They do it over and over again, right? And over time, you train your eye so that when I look at this, I see right away here, there's 4 levels. This is an even level to this, about the same length, to about here, about the same length, to about here. And you start to look at, here's this triangular shape here with the flowers, and the edges of that kind of match up with the edges of the vase. And you start doing geometry in your head. And you have all these kind of functional cues that help you get the proportions right. And then you can focus on things like light and dark and contrast. And all of that happens over time with struggle, such that once you're in advanced drawing, right, people are looking at the same thing and they're drawing it pretty much the same way and more accurately, right? And it's not the hand-eye coordination that changes. Everyone says hand-eye coordination. You know, we're humans, we have great hand-eye coordination, but it's the cognition, it's the seeing that changes, and you have to go through a lot of struggle and process to get to that point. To that point, it's the same in biology. Students enter their core courses, they go into introductory biology, and they're faced with all these details. The flowers, the stems, the vase, you know, the leaves, and all of these different names, you know, and all the different processes and everything that you learn. And for their exams, they're cramming a huge amount of information in. And they're trying to remember everything as little bits and pieces so that they can pass their exams. But they don't struggle enough sometimes to really start to formulate the scaffolding and the structure that they're going to need to start hanging these things on them. And I was looking at a student right here in the audience who said, you know, I never really started putting all those things together until I was studying for the MCAT. And once you start to struggle and study and really, really work repetitively with things, you start to formulate context. And that's what I really tried to do in my major. I'm getting students in their 3rd year. They've completed the core, but they haven't necessarily done the kind of struggle that puts everything into context. So I have a high structured learning environment. I do a lecture, just a boring, traditional old lecture, deliver the content. And then the next day they do a group activity. Low stakes, they struggle a little, they reinforce what they heard in lecture, good enough. And then the real magic happens here, student presentations. And we do this through disease. So they're presenting on different diseases, the major diseases, non-infectious, infectious, diseases of the nervous system that affect human beings. And then the students watching those presentations, each week they do a writing assignment. But the presentations go like this. A lot of you have been through this. So in the patients groups, we have a group of patients. And those patients, they develop the background story. They develop the case, the patient case. And they do this with kind of a Dungeons and Dragons style dice roll. We have lots and lots of criteria. So we have, you know, is the person, their BMI, their age, their risk factors, do they have comorbidities? Do they have substance problems? Are they taking any other medications? You know, we go through all this. What's the stress in their life? What is their life like? And they create the patient's story, and they try to be tricky. They get tricky because they're going to go up against the doctors and they want to give the doctors something to think about. And so they come up with some great complex cases for the doctors. And then they present to the doctors, and the doctors are there. They know the basic disease. So say the disease is beta thalassemia. They know it's going to be beta thalassemia. And so they're prepared to identify symptoms. They know what tests to call for and how to describe the mechanism, how those tests work. They can interpret the results. I'm the lab. I give them the results on the day they are presenting. So they only get the results then, and they have to interpret them on their feet. And they have to know the mechanism of what treatments to give, and they have to describe those mechanisms. And I sit there like the critic, and I watch what they do. And here's how it goes. Patient comes in, presents with beta thalassemia minor. He's having some aches and pains. He feels very fatiguey. They run some lab tests, some blood tests, comes back. Patient has no hemoglobin, right? And the patient has a homozygous mutation for beta thalassemia. And then the very, very perfect student steps up. And they say, aha, I found the problem. The patient has beta thalassemia. They have a homozygous mutation, and they have no hemoglobin, and da, da, da. And I say, don't tell me, tell the patient. You're not treating me, you're treating them. So they go over and they talk to the patient. And then I'll see one student in the back there standing up in the group, and he's giving me a stink eye. And I go, you, why are you looking at me like that? Oh, Dr. Nick. I'm so sorry, Dr. Nick. I think you made a mistake. Nope, I didn't make a mistake, but what are you thinking? Well, there's something wrong with the patient. What's wrong with the patient? Oh, he's alive. He's still alive. And I said, yes, because he has a homozygous lethal mutation. Without blood transfusions, that patient would be dead. But he's 37 and he's talking to you and he's telling you he feels fatigued. So what happened? I don't know. What did I give you? What lab test did I give you? Well, you gave us the mutations for beta thalassemia and another mutation. Perfect student says, well, that mutation isn't one that causes beta thalassemia. And I said, yeah, but what does it do, right? And then right there in front of the other students, they're stressed out and they have to look that up. And oh my gosh, what does that mutation do? And oh my gosh, it's in the promoter region of a gamma globin and it upregulates gamma globin. And oh my gosh, that makes fetal hemoglobin. And this guy's 37. He's been living on his fetal hemoglobin for his whole life. And he's pretty much okay, right? And then they have to determine, well, from there, how are we going to treat this guy? Can we help them? So that's kind of how these classes go. And that's the struggle. And the struggle kind of puts together the scaffolding of everything from the genetic mutation to the cellular physiology to the physical organ systems and their interactions, and then the symptomology. And that's what I try to do in these classes. And students seem to really have fun with it. In fact, I have a kind of scaffolding in my classes, like a family, like a hierarchy, an ideal primate hierarchy, where I bring students who suffered through these processes back into the classrooms to serve as learning assistants. And as learning assistants, they're like, oh, be ready for this, be ready for that. And they're so cool. And they really, really care about their groups that they mentor. And they sit there during the presentations. And one was knocking me during the presentation this year. And he said, Dr. Nick, I don't think they got that thing right, Dr. Nick. And he said, what's wrong? You're not being as mean to them as you were to us in our year. And I said, oh yeah, it's working. I can see it's working. So they go on, they graduate, they go on to prepare for medical school. Some of them get in and they come back and they talk to our current cohort about what that's like. And we've done some research in these classes just really quickly. It's easy to show learning gains in terms of, yeah, they learn the content. Students can learn the content, right? But we showed something a little bit different in that not only do they learn content in these courses, but they develop soft skills. How do you talk to a patient? How do you interact with other people? So we saw a significant increase in the use of scientific and medical language. And the way we did this is we videotaped these students interacting in these mock presentations. We videotaped them at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year, and we saw distinct changes in behavior. We marked them just like you mark primate behavior. We marked them for different criteria. we saw that they were better at doing case study diagnosis. They were better at interacting with group mates to get their ideas, their thoughts. There was less micromanaging of other people. And all of these things came together. And this is what med schools want. You know, they want a well-developed human being who can interact with patients. And so training pre-meds is very different than training research scientists. You know, you're training for different skill sets. And so that's what we try to do. So that's all that I really have to tell you today. This is our major. There's a great kind of camaraderie that happens within the major as students interact in these groups and they do different tasks and they suffer together and develop love through attrition. And they go on to be lifelong friends even after they graduate. And so I conclude my talk. What matters to me is them.
So we'll go ahead and open it up for questions. If you have a question, raise your hand. Please wait for the microphone. We will bring it around, and that way everyone on Zoom can also hear us. And I guess while we wait for our first question, I'll go ahead and jump in. You know, you talked a lot about struggle, right? And and I'm curious, is that informed by sort of your own process? Is that something that, like, you know, you learned about in, like, academically, or, you know, and can we think about struggle as not being a struggle, or is it, like, necessary? Like, how do we struggle without struggling? Does that make sense?
I'm a weird person to ask that. I struggled my whole life, actually, but not really. You know, it's like it didn't affect me. I was a weird kid. They pulled me out early. They said, oh, she's not meeting the developmental goals. And I watched people around, these kids around me early in grade school, and they were all like fighting for the jungle gyms, and they were all trying to jump on and push each other off. And I thought, oh my gosh. You know, so I go back in the classroom, and I take all the metal chairs and turn them over on top of the desks. And I said, look, now everyone has their own jungle gym. You don't have to fight. You know, it was things like that. They pulled me out of class. They said, this one's a little different. And I went through a lot of testing. You know, they did a lot of cognitive and IQ testing, all kinds of stuff. And the test came back and they said, oh, no, there's nothing wrong with her. She's really, really smart. We need to skip her in school. So that was a struggle, right? Because I never, from the very start, never really fit. But then I had this great family that I did fit into, you know, and we were all similar in our differences. So I don't know that I feel the struggle so much, but obviously cognitively, I go through those processes of developing. And I'm very passionate when I really do care about something. Yeah. I hope that answered that. Yeah. I got a question here.
Thank you for the wonderful talk. It was very nice to hear about it. I wanted to ask, you mentioned that you were in art school, and then that's when you kind of started with your interest in human behavior. Can you talk a little more on, like, how you pivoted from art school into kind of the field that you're in today?
Yeah, this is a story I tell my students, and I told my students I'm not going to tell faculty this story, but I went to art school. I did finish my BFA, and I was playing in bands and stuff like that, and I just got interested. I was going to Barnes & Noble. There was no internet. I was, you know, going there to drink lattes and read books, and I just was drawn to science, and I was reading all about science. And literally, I got so interested, I walked into the closest college to where I lived. You know, I was living in an apartment. I was working as an artist. I walked into the college, and I went down the hall, and I walked in someone's office, and I said, I need to do this. I need to study science. And he said, who are you? He looked up my art GPA, and he's like, no. You will not study science. You don't have what it takes. But I took a job at that college working in the labs. And eventually, over time, after working there, making media and stuff like that, they said, oh, she's she's not that dumb. She's pretty smart. And they let me into the program, and from there, you know, I love that. I love science. I still stay up till 3 a.m. sometimes going down the rabbit hole, learning new things. And when you really love something, it's not as much of a struggle. But that's the story. That's how I did that.
Hello. Thank you, Dr. Nick, for your talk, by the way.
Sure.
I just had a question on like education research, and I was wondering when you're doing all this research about what improves like human bio students and what skills they get, what do you hope to get from that research? And I guess another question I have is through your time at UCI, is there anything that you still want to do? Is there stuff that you've been thinking about, like, oh, I want to put this?
Good, great, yeah. So I mean, I guess we all want to validate what we're doing and why we're here, and kind of assessing what we do as educators is important, right? To show that we're having some impact on our students. It's not that I doubt it, but it's important, you know, to go to a talk and be able to say, hey, this is what we do. And your second question was, can you remind me the second part? Because it was good.
I was going to say for like the human biology,
Yeah.
is there anything that you still want to do?
Oh, that's it, yes. Yes, I really want to make a video game. I'm an avid video game player, and I would really love, it was the first thing I wanted to do when I got here, and it's still in the back of my mind. I would love to make a playable video game about medical pre-health, like the things you got to study for the MCAT. Yeah.
Hi, Dr. Nick. Again, I always love hearing you talk, hearing your stories. I love you so much. I have a question for you. With the amount of time we have, such a finite amount of time, how are we supposed to juggle like figuring out what matters to us, going through the failures and the struggles, and still coming out successful and achieving something out of it?
Well, you guys are all going to be successful. I mean, you just have to. I mean, I had a unique situation. I got to see all these very successful people go ahead of me. So it's kind of like, well, I kind of got to do something, right? I think you need to look to the people that you admire and look at, I mean, this is a great talk, right? Because you allow people to come up and talk about their struggles and their barriers and the things they overcame. And, you know, you need to know those stories so that when you go through those things, you have something to compare it to. Yeah.
Hello, Dr. Nick.
Hey, Dylan.
Wonderful presentation. I was just wondering, what is the secret of your father? He's 99 years old, and you said he has perfect cognition. You always call him. He talks about everything. Like, that's a rare case.
You and me both, man. I mean, I wish. He eats a lot of sardines. I mean, I can't point to one thing and say, oh, he worked out, he was always at the gym. I think he just loves life, you know? I mean, I think he just really likes himself, and he's got a great family. He feels like he's accomplished a lot. And yeah, and good, I mean, just basic. He inherited some. His mom also lived to 103. And so he's got some good genetic background or whatever that is. I don't know. Good vascular system in his head.
So sardines is the secret.
I don't know. This. I can't go that far. I don't think it's diet or exercise or anything really specific. I think it's kind of what you get in low stress. You know, and that's a personality trait too. He's a low stress person. Yeah.
Hi, Dr. Nick. Thank
Hey,
you for the great talk. I also love you. I just wanted to ask you, I feel like my peers and I are kind of in a very unique time with the proliferation of AI, and I obviously respect you for more than just what you have studied in human biology, but like you said, you're studying art and kind of the symmetry of overall like primates. I wonder if you have a piece of advice that you think is especially applicable to my peers and I who are segueing into the field of healthcare in this specific time. Yeah,
I mean, you got to be self-disciplined. You know, you gotta make yourself struggle. You can offload almost anything to AI. And I have built my career on doing active learning and active teaching. And there's a lot of activities that AI can do. I think one of the first things I did with the advent of AI was I sat down, I ran my essay exams through AI, and I said, oh, shoot. You know, it could answer like 50% of them correctly. So, yeah, it's a challenge, but I mean, it's just a new thing like anything else. Like, you know, it's like when your teacher gave you homework assignments to do math problems that had the answers in the back of the book. You know, are you going to do those problems, or are you just going to look in the back of the book? I mean, it's really on people. You got to want to learn. You have to go through the process. And I always tell my students, you got to look away from your technology, from your notes, from your textbooks. You got to look away, and you got to think in your head. You got to make those connections grow. But sure, yeah, it's a big deal, because it's so, I mean, we are efficient creatures, and we're always going to go towards the easiest, most efficient way to solve a problem. And that's just evolution, right? But in a way, you know, you can harness AI to do a lot of unique and new things. And I had students come up, human bio students came up to me, and they said, hey, you know, we want to use ChatGPT to make a in-class game on STD spread and diagnosis. And you probably played that game in the class, and that was made by students using AI. And once things are gamified, a game, you know, AI can't play a game. So if you gamify active learning, students have to engage. And it's all about finding new ways to get students to engage with material, which is why I want to make a video game so badly.
As one of your colleagues, I've been watching you develop this major, and I'm always a little jealous of how well you seem to manage group work in particular. And I think one of the things I struggle with when I try to implement group work is that groups sort of, there's always one person who, like, you know, is very active and tends to take over, and then there are other people who sort of just become more and more quiet as the more active person takes over, and they form these little hierarchies, right? Even
Yep.
you know, without you doing anything, self-organized, if you will. And so I'm just wondering whether you have particular strategies to make sure that everyone, you know, participates in the presentations, and, you know, and how you distribute the work and pull along the ones who are maybe more reluctant to put themselves out there.
Well, it's part of the grade. You know what I'm talking about. It's part of the grade, you know? And when I see that happening, I got a micromanager sitting right in the front row right here. He's great though. He's super smart. He could carry the whole presentation by himself, right? But it's part of their grade to incorporate the other people in the group. I want to hear every single one of them say something. And sometimes you get one person who's writing the script for everybody else in the group, but that doesn't work, because when you question them, they better be able to be prepared to field the questions. So if they don't do that, then their grade suffers. But we switch the groups I get them for a year, right? So I give them fall, winter, and spring. And we switch up those groups. So they get a chance to interact with different people with different strategies. And yeah, frankly, I don't care. That's life. You got to learn to work with all different people, or not work with anybody. I mean, it's your choice.
Hi, Andrea. One of the questions I had was, I hear that you really care about other people and not about yourself. And I'm kind of curious about what prompted that. Like, you mentioned in the context of being a mother, was it motherhood that prompted that, or that it was always there that you had this value, but you just maybe noticed it during that phase? Or I'm just kind of curious about that value that you have and how it came about.
Thanks, Audrey. That's a nice question. I get really scared because she's also a teaching professor, so I was predicting there was going to be a real teachery question in there. But my family was really the learning place. I was the baby of 6, and you learn really quickly at dinner time, TV time, all the other times, right? That it has to be a shared experience. No one gets their way. Everybody compromises, and I had to compromise a lot because I was the smallest and the youngest, and You get used to not being the most important person in the room, but that's a nice feeling, actually, to be part of something. So I think there's that. I think I just never had it in me, really, to think too much about myself, because I never had a chance to. But yes, motherhood, right? When you have a child, oh man, I remember bringing my baby home from the hospital, and it was the first time I realized I couldn't take a shower, I couldn't get a pizza, I couldn't eat the pizza. It was like, wow, this thing is here and doesn't care what matters to me at all. So, but it's, parenthood it's a short time in a long lifespan. You got to really be there when they're there, because they grow up and they move on, and brothers and sisters grow up and move on. That was sad. And you guys all grow up and you move on, and oh my gosh, you have to really appreciate the time that you're with people, I think, while you have them captive.
Hi, Dr. Nick. First of all, I wanted to say thank you so much for the human biology major. I get a lot of my friends from other universities talking about how they don't have something like this, and we have 3/4 worth of it. So my question is, what urged you and what was the trigger to creating the human biology major?
I got asked. It wasn't really my idea. I got asked. They wanted to have a pre-health major or offering. It started out very small. It's just going to be a very niche kind of boutique major for very high, academically scoring students. And they enjoyed it, and they liked it. I remember George was like, oh, be careful starting a major because you never know which way it'll go. And so I always had that pressure. I just got to be successful. But I just felt like, I'm a distracted expansionist. I like to expand and grow things and push things. And I just want more and more people to play with and have fun with. So that's what kind of happened. And we grew it. It started just one semester. It was just a course. And it just got bigger and bigger. Yeah.
Hi, Dr. Nick. Great presentation as always.
Thanks,
I was wondering, so, as you started up the major, like you were talking about human bio, you took a lot of unique approaches with like the class design. What do you think was one of your biggest challenges in implementing the structure that we have now?
I don't know that I never really felt super challenged. I think probably learning all the content. Because my background was in neuroscience, and I had to learn a whole new field of content in order to teach. When you guys go up, I got to know it better than you, or at least as good as you, right? So when you guys present, I can make you think critically. So that, I think, was probably the biggest task I had to do. But the rest was just fun. I love designing courses, and we're designing a new course right now, and you're part of that. Using AI, by the way, we're using AI in all the activities and that, so yeah. Yeah.
Hello. Hi, it's
Hi.
working now.
Hey.
Hi. So yeah, thank you for your talk. And you kind of mentioned this with your dad, and I see it in you too, in that you're excited to be alive. And I really admire that. I think an exciting life is one in which you're actually excited to be alive. And you're so present in what you do. And I wanted to ask, I guess, what are some little things that we as students might overlook, some little things that help you bring that excitement and presence to every day?
I don't know. I was born in a different time, way back in the day, before internet, before doom scrolling and social media. And you guys just had to make it on your feet, man. And like I said, my brothers were throwing outrageous parties in the city. They were the most eligible bachelors. And, it was, I lived a lot, and then my high heels broke, and that was that. But I think having a life, get out there, experience things firsthand, that is also scaffolding. Everything you experience in your life, not through your phone, Go out, take a hike, go out, go to the ocean, swim in the ocean when it's clean. You know, do real, go to fancy restaurants, try all the food, try all the stuff, do it all real, because you got to build the scaffolding. You're never going to build scaffolding for the context of your cell phone. It's not the same, even though I love virtual worlds and spending time in them. Yeah.
Hello. I think what's unique about you that you probably don't realize, because you're you, is you have both the right brain and the left brain going, right? You have this art background, you have this science background, and it's a pretty unorthodox path that you have journeyed through. And I don't really know that that's a question more than just an observation, but does that at all resonate with you? You sing in a band. I mean, all these things.
You know, I have a brain defect, actually. And I actually have one of the main venous sinuses in my head. It was clogged with embolism from probably happened in early childhood sometime, you know. But maybe that had a little bit to do with kind of unusual brain development and maybe a little bit of an unusual approach. Doesn't affect my cognition at all, obviously. And I don't know. I mean, there's definitely something different.
Yeah. Speaking of band, when and where can we come watch you?
Right
I want to hear you sing.
Right on. Yeah, there's a show. There's an 80s show coming up in one of the bands that I don't know if students are allowed. I was just asking them last night, can I ask students? But there's shows. It's better to do non-drinking shows with students. You know, I don't like to get caught out anywhere. But we had some great shows at pizza places, and you've seen some of the pictures of those. And yeah, that's fun. Someday, yeah, I'll let you know.
Dr. Nick, you mentioned that you're designing a new class.
Yeah, you're going to take it, right?
Oh, the BioSci 48? Is that the new class?
Yeah,
oh,
you told me you were signing up for it. Yeah.
No, I didn't sign up yet.
You didn't? Well, yeah, the neuroscience of wellness and well-being.
Well-being.
Yeah, we're reinvigorating that course, and Hassan's helping me, and Anu's helping me with that, and it's going to be pretty cool.
Okay, I think we have time for one last question.
All right. Hello, micromanager here. I've scripted out my question. All right. So okay, thank you for the presentation and then for helping all of us learn, and me myself, how to cooperate within the ideal primate troop. So I'm sure you put in a lot of thought into the very first iteration of the human bio class, like the presentation style, the primate troop, and how you scaffold all the content into context. I'm just curious, how has that evolved from then to now in the current iteration, and how do you think it's going to evolve going forward, for beyond the video game, unless you want to talk more about the video game?
Well, I have to rethink, like you guys have been saying with AI, I have to rethink a lot of the activities that we do in class. It evolved because it just got bigger and we wanted to take over, and then there were ancillary clubs and free clinics and outreach, and now my students are doing stuff, you know, with grade schoolers and middle schoolers and high schoolers, and we do summer programs, and I think that it's grown so large. I'm like, it's like the balloon is like, you know, right there, it's right ready to pop. So yeah, going forward, I think keeping it the same size and making it even more enriched, I think did that answer your question in terms of the primate troop? I think in the primate troop, you know, we've added in mentors and learning assistants and TAs and things like that really help out the course. A little bit of hierarchy. Alumni. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And please join me in thanking Dr. Nick again.